Trader. You're watching Titletown South Florida.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Titletown South Florida, the Miami Herald's high school sports show. I'm Andre Fernandez, Deputy Sports Editor, back for another week to talk about another week of action in the high school football world and outside around the high school community. And joining me this week, special guest that's been on the show before. Now we brought him back not just to be a guest on the show, but to be the co-host for this week's episode. That's Joe Forsaro, who writes for us here at the Miami Herald and also for Scorebook Live. Joe, how you doing, man?
Andre, it's a pleasure. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. It's been a very interesting start to the high school season. I'm actually just happy that we didn't have any more lightning and weather delays last week. Knock on wood. Hopefully that continues to be the trend for a while. But got to play some football without any interruptions. Yeah. I mean, we had what a week. I mean, I think, Andre, this is like week 3. You're starting to see the quality of play picking up. You're starting to see, these intense rivalries. September's always fun because of the non-district matchups. You can pit heavyweights against each other. Had a little controversy, at least in one place here. It's going to be fun to dive into it. I look forward to this episode. Yeah, definitely. I think you start to see kind of a little bit of separation because you finally had one matchup, and we're going to get into some of that as the show rolls on here. But before we do, just a reminder that if you're listening to this as a pod, this is going to be the last time we do that. Now we've gone strictly to video, so catch us on YouTube or at MiamiHerald.com, where that's going to be going forward. And like we said before, I think some separation between some of the powerhouses. We had one good matchup in that sense. A lot of the top ranked teams, and also, like you said, a little controversy. We're going to get to that also in a moment. But let's start with two teams that were a little bit under the radar, and that's Edison and North Miami, but especially Edison. A couple of years ago, this is a team that was in the regional finals before they lost to Chaminade when they were both paired together, before they made the whole shift to the metro suburban classes and all that. But Edison, a team that was, speaking of the weather, all 3 of their games, including their preseason classic, were shortened by the weather or just not played at all. And finally, they step out the other day. They got some sunshine. They face North Miami, looking to go 2-0 at the expense of their neighborhood rival. One of the best kids for them last week was a running back, Sterling Juice Joseph. They call him Juice. Ran for 207 yards and 2 touchdowns. Here's the first of those early run in the first quarter. The Pioneers, though, came back with their defense and responded with a turnover, put them in striking distance. But here was one of the best plays I've seen so far this season, made by Edison linebacker Alonzo Barnes. Basically, running back for North Miami was fighting for extra yardage. Ball comes out, and he takes it to the house down the sideline. So at that point, you're thinking Edison's going to cruise 14-0, big momentum swing. Guess again, the Pioneers made a play of their own. Estevans Balan with the first of 2 interceptions, number 44. Check this one out. And then the Pioneers were able to cut the lead to 14-13 as Michael Zephyrin made a nice move. They looked like they faked it one way, came back to Kendrick Cannon for this touchdown pass. Now, North Miami coming into this game had a couple close calls. They were 0-2 looking for that big win. And here they come again. That Zephyrin to Cannon connection sets them up at the 1-yard line, which would lead to a touchdown run. But here's the pass. But Edison finally at the end held tough. Here's the 2-point conversion try, which North Miami had to do after a kind of a questionable decision earlier when it was 14-13. They went for 2 and missed instead of tying the game late in the third quarter. Ended up costing them. Here's a nice breakup by defensive back Jet White of Edison. So after that, that meant an Edison victory. Edison improves to 2-0. Feels like they should be 3-0 now. But another frustrating loss for North Miami. Here's Barnes and Joseph both talking about the big win for the Red Raiders.
So, guys, talk a little bit about tell me a little bit about just getting the 2-0. It's been kind of hard with all the weather delays, adversity on off the field. But what's kind of held everybody together to get this done?
We brothers, and we got a heck of a defense. Offense, we be stalling, but we trying to get the pieces together. Got Alonzo Barnes, a dog, man, but we just been trying to keep our minds right, trying to lead. Yeah, that's it. So we staying focused.
We know we got a few things to clean up, man. We're going to clean it up and just get to the next one.
So when you walked in today, you saw no rain, no lightning, no nothing. You're
probably
like,
good. We walked in.
Our first full game we played. We played 2 games, 8-minute quarters. One got canceled. We was our first game we played, so we had to come out here and ball. It was a tough win, but that's what we worked for.
So tell me about that play down there, because that was a game changer.
Man, I ain't know what to do, man. I just got the ball and we going to the house. That's all I know.
It's natural.
You ripped it out, right? You ripped it out too, or did you pick it up off the? Okay.
The house.
That all the penalties, everything. What kind of kept you focused to pull it out at the end?
Man, based off what our coaches tell us, man, just keep your head in the games. And that's all it is.
Great coach. We got to look past. We got to let it go. Next play. Next play every time. Next play.
Coach was saying to everybody, your GPAs. You guys are doing really well in school. How important has that been for both of you?
That's everything right there. That's what the colleges want. So, we got to get them what they want so we can get to the next level too.
Yeah.
We take it real serious. I only promote student athletes, and my mom's a teacher, so I don't have a choice.
Yeah. You got a lot of football players in your family. I know. I remember Hilton. Yeah.
So a countless number. The Joseph last name.
Yeah.
Joseph. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I got my another cousin out here that play D line here, freshman, Mark Joseph, 2027, I think. I'm getting old, man. So yeah, he's gonna be the next one. The next one.
What's your college situation right now? What's that looking like, more or less?
I have 11 offers right now. There's a couple schools. I still didn't make no decision yet. I don't have it in my mind. I have to stay in contact. So I'm still thinking about it. It'll be soon.
Okay. And so, how about you?
Same thing, man. Same thing. Just keep working, man. Just continue to work, man. We're gonna get there.
So Edison 2-0, but now it's going to get tougher because this week on Thursday, a lot of games on Thursday this week, by the way, all around Dade and Broward. And one of the good ones is going to be when Edison takes on Northwestern. A similar situation, Northwestern team, not as pretty as Edison's record looks right now, 1-2, coming off a tough loss to Venice. This was a shootout on Saturday. They lost 63-46. Kind of hurts when you put up 46 points and still can't beat a team. But in this case, they couldn't handle the Class 4S runner-up, I believe Venice was last year. But, Joe, there's what I wanted to bring you in and talk a little bit. I know you're familiar with Northwestern, and we saw them at Media Day, young team. Obviously the powerhouse for the last couple of years. Tiger Dickens was their quarterback, was a big, influence there. But, they're going to a younger quarterbacks back there now. But it looks like the offense is explosive still. And this team, they're young, but still very talented. I think this is a team still that could be better than people think.
Yeah, I think with Michael Lee Harris, I think he's going to do a great job there. Dre, the team like Northwestern, that's a team I want to see a month from now because, right. It's not totally surprising they take their lumps a little bit early, but you could see that they're building it. They're building it right. A lot of good young kids. Just looking at that roster, the amount of sophomores they have. But when you're putting up 46 points, I think they had big numbers a week or so ago as well. I think they lost that game too. But just explosive plays and a lot of athletes. And this is the year that they may take their lumps. But I think Northwestern, like I said, I want to see them about week 7 or 8, 9, 10, and then obviously the future could be very, very bright for Northwestern.
Yeah, and their schedule, I mean, they face Booker T, they face Central. I have to check. I'm not sure if they face Norland too, but a lot of tough opponents. But they could, like you said, it could be one of those teams that, yeah, they're gonna go in underdogs in all those games, but maybe they're the type that by a month from now, when they've gone through all those wars, all those battles, could sneak up and bite somebody, and then that's going to be the interesting day to be there to see that happen, and that big building block for Michael Lee Harris and those guys. But speaking of Booker T, speaking of Central, let's switch gears now and talk about that game. It was Traz on Friday night, the first big collision between superpowers in Class 2M as Central took on Booker T. The Rockets, of course, were looking to bounce back after that frustrating loss in Vegas the week before against Bishop Gorman, and they struck quickly. 21 points on their first 6 plays. Kind of shows you Central can still do it on offense. Jaden Ford ripped an 80-yard touchdown run on their second play. And then on the ensuing drive, Antonio Smith, one of their quarterbacks, hits Khalil Sterling. He takes it to the house. And then 35-yard touchdown run by King Davis. They have a deep backfield. Here's King Davis's run. Booker T, though, they answer back quickly. 2 quick touchdown passes from Claudel Sherman. He hits a couple of his receivers that break them, make it 21-14. Right before the half, Central adds a field goal, but it would have been worse had it not been for this nice play in the back of the end zone by Lavaris Stanford. Take a look. Booker T continued to fight back, though. Sherman finds Andre Brown to set up a score that cuts the lead to 24-21. Here's a pass from Sherman to Andre Brown. Andre Brown with one of the touchdowns early on for Booker T as well. But then here's where Central's depth came into play, and here was the backbreaker, really, when you look at it. And this is one of the new additions for the Rockets, 5-star D end Armando Blunt with the scoop and score. But even then, Booker T didn't stop fighting. We know Ice Harris's boys, they don't give up, doesn't matter who the opponent. Sherman finds Gerald Modest, the busted coverage by Central here on this screen pass. The Rockets, though, put it away on a touchdown run by their other quarterback, J.C. Evans, the transfer from Texas, makes it a 38-28 game, and they hang on to move to 1-1 on the season. Interesting what's happened with the quarterback situation there. Beckham Kritza, the other quarterback, transferred out. So they've settled now on basically a 2-quarterback rotation between Evans and Smith. But Juke Joseph, and we know how intense he is, Joe. Yeah. He was not happy with the victory. He thought they still looked sloppy, especially on the defensive side of the ball. He expects more. Let's hear from Juke real quick.
I mean, there's a lot of things that we got to clean up. I understand that, we just left an arduous road trip, coming across the country. Having a week to prepare, a lot of internal things were happening this week, but that still doesn't matter. If people can't see Rocky football, we got to get them Rocky football. For the past 4 years, they've been getting a championship standard, and guess what? I failed the community so far and giving them a championship standard. We're going to make sure that this gets fixed. It's going to get corrected. Even in the win, at the end of the day, the kids fought, and I'm happy for that. But at the end of the day, they know the standard that we have here at Miami Central on 95th Street. And that wasn't that tonight. Hats off to Booker T. They're a great team, coached by some great guys. It's a spirited rivalry. But at the end of the day, we know what we're capable of as a team here at Miami Central.
Coach, some of the plays though later on that were made to kind of hang on and get the game, and Armando gets that big fumble, scoop up there.
Yeah,
just the resilience though at the end. Though.
Right.
So, yeah.
I mean, that's what we try to impute in them. Resilience, fighting through adversity, putting them in adverse situations every day in practice, but continuously just pushing through. It doesn't matter how you start, it's how you finish. And they finish strong, But at the end of the day, we all know, we play 4 quarters of football here at Miami Central, 48 minutes. Yeah. And, I really feel like we didn't play 48 minutes here of football. And that's on me as a head coach, and I need to adjust that and address that. And make sure, and rest and behold, the next time Miami Central touches the football field here at the Mecca, you'll see a different brand of football.
What'd you see from your team this week, though, coming off, with the plane ride back and everything? Like,
I'll be honest with you, man. At the end of the day, we do what we stood up for when we got the schedule. And that's no excuse. We got to come and play football every single day, especially in South Florida. That's just a testament to how good South Florida football is. Shouts out to Coach Ice. Shouts out to Coach Max. Shouts out to that great staff here at Booker T. But we also know we have a great staff here at Miami Central. We know the standard that we play football here. We know that we're playing on the national scale. Not saying that they're not, but we know that we every time we touch the field, there's a brand that we have to uphold. And right now, those first 2 quarters, we wasn't really upholding that brand defensively, and then we just brought it together at the end, and I'll take that.
Yeah, at the beginning, though, it shows the potential, though. Like,
right.
6 plays, I think you scored 21 points.
Right, we got a lot to build off, but we got to put a complete game together as a team, and I think that we're right around that corner. We're right where we need to be, but we get pushed over that hump.
Yeah, well, Central, as we know, next week they face a district game with Carroll City, which shouldn't be too much trouble for them, I would think. And then the big showdown, the one we all wanted last year. We couldn't get it last year. We're going to get it this year. September 21st, ESPN2 on a Thursday night at Traz Powell. We'll dive in plenty into that game in next week's episode for sure. But, Joe, what are your thoughts? What do you think? What do you think of Central just so far? I mean, they go out to Vegas. It looks like the offense is clicking, but like Jube said, they expect more from the defensive side. But you're starting to see glimpses of some of those new guys. I mean, we didn't even have it on the highlight, but E.J. Marcelin, a guy that we knew was going to take over for Ruben Bain, had at least three sacks from what I saw in the game. So it looks like those younger guys starting to emerge a little bit into those leadership roles, making big plays.
Drake, what I see with Central right now, I think they're just trying to find their identity, and they will. And you can see in Coach Jube, he knows he knows what it takes, and it's just with the losses they have from last year at quarterback and Bain and they just haven't found that identity yet. And once they do, watch out. The 3 quarterbacks we're figuring out how that would work. Now, as you say, they're 2. They're trying to figure that part of it out. And they're trying to live up to the standard. I can't even imagine being 16, 17, 18, flying out to Vegas to play a football game, come back, get a rivalry game against a very physical team in Booker T. I think they're going to be fine. They may, this isn't, the standard, the national stage isn't necessarily there in terms of a national title. That loss, maybe they could recruit that against Chaminade in a couple of weeks. But I just think that Central's just got to get their identity. I'm sure Coach Joseph's looking to see what quarterback really takes charge and who's the leader of this team and gets all this clicking. But I also will say I love the high step by Armando Blunt on that scoop 6, and you see the big man jumping over a body. I thought that was very entertaining. And when you have that many 5 stars, not everyone's going to be really worried about Miami Central. The only question is are they going to reach that last year level of high in the previous few where they won titles and went 5 in a row? Are they going to be a 2-loss state champ? Are they going to be 1-loss state champ with rolling in with a chance for national recognition? That, I think, is pretty much what Miami Central's looking at.
I'm glad you brought that up because Armando Blunt is a multi-time state champion in track. Guess the event.
Oh, he's a hurdler?
No, that's the trick question. He's actually a multi-state champion thrower. He's done it in the shot and the discus. And I was saying the same thing. I'm like, I told somebody on the sideline, I'm like, he's not even a hurdler in track. He's a thrower because of that upper body strength that he has, all that. So go figure what a crazy freakish athlete he is that he could do both like that. And maybe Central track team will put him on the hurdles this season. Who knows?
Yeah. Don't you just sense that once when you had the presences of Keon Jenkins last year on offense and Ruben Bain, those voices probably are still there in some capacity, if you know what I mean, that somebody else's voice, that they're going to be, whether it's Blunt, somebody has got to step up and make that, like I said, what's their identity for the 2023 version of the Central Rockets?
Right. And that's what I mean. Like, I think of guys like him, E.J. Marcelin, like you're starting to see maybe those will start emerging over the next few weeks, especially in games like Chaminade, where it's going to have to be guys are going to have to make plays like that. But going forward, let's switch gears. Something not as good this week, but we did get a positive update from that American Goldman game. We were looking forward to having a little bit more about the game itself. This was a game between 2 teams that have been through some tough times in recent years, a lot of losing, but 2 teams that starting to turn the corner. Ended up being a good one down to the fourth quarter when American was up 14-12 after Goldman had jumped out to a lead. But then the game, really, the concern became about receiver Jamonte Parks for Goldman. Took a big hit on the sideline, collapsed. We already had a scary situation earlier this season with Timothy Burrows-Love over at American Heritage. But we got an update over the weekend that Parks was okay, no spinal injury, no neck injury, just a concussion. I mean, I hate to say just a concussion, but you feared that it could have been something where you're dealing with something a lot worse from the looks of what that hit was. So it sounds like Jamonte is going to be better. Not sure when or if he'll be able to return to the football field this season, but we're definitely wanted to just say for a second that we're happy that he's okay and on the road to recovery over there at Goldman. And they're looking to finish that game this Wednesday at 2:00 as well, as it was 14-12 American in the fourth quarter. And on a different note, now we're going to talk about what Joe teased to earlier in the episode, a little bit of a weird, controversial finish, to say the least, in that game between two defending state champions. Cocoa, of course, Class 2S reigning champion, and then you had St. Thomas, the 4-time reigning state champion, at St. Thomas. This game was wild. It went back and forth. Cocoa basically jumped to a lead 16-7 early in the game, and then it kept going from 9-2, but St. Thomas just couldn't get that score to jump ahead in the game. And then finally, at the end of the game, it's 36-34 and a wild final minute and 28 seconds where there was some iffy timekeeping going on over there by the officiating crew, led to Francesco Pileggi hitting a 19-yard chip shot and St. Thomas coming away with the victory, 37-36. But really, just to take people through what happened, I mean, Cocoa ends up with possession with 1:28 to go. And mind you, there's a 40-second play clock in high school football. Aquinas had only one timeout remaining. So they take one of those, the quarterback for Cocoa, Brady Hart, who had a great game, by the way, 410 yards passing. I mean, Cocoa throws like crazy. He takes a couple steps back and takes a knee. But only 1 second comes off the clock, which normally you're looking at that and you're thinking a little bit more should have come off of that. So Aquinas takes the one timeout they had remaining. The coaches, though, at Cocoa were just irate. Apparently drew a 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalty. That moved the ball back to the 23-yard line where they were. And now they take another knee in the same fashion, take a couple steps back, but then their quarterback gets hit, and they call a 15-yard penalty on Aquinas, which is not an automatic first down because of the yardage. It wasn't enough. But with 1:21 to go, that's where the clock should have restarted. It never did. Stayed at 1:21, forced Cocoa to take another knee, which then winds the clock down to about 32 seconds, give or take. But at that point, they probably could have run the clock out completely, or probably should have, had they done what is normally the case in terms of winding the ball down. So then they have to punt. Aquinas returns it to the Cocoa 38 with 22 seconds left in the game. Flag gets thrown on that return, then gets picked up. So again, you're wondering, okay. Then with 14 seconds, down to 14 seconds left, Andrew Indorf, quarterback for St. Thomas, it's a beautiful pass to Chance Robinson down to the 1-yard line. They spike it, 13 ticks to go. They run 2 plays, 2 incomplete passes, and yet only 4 seconds come off the clock during those 2 incomplete passes. So again, you're there scratching your head like, okay, I mean, you kind of understand that Coco's looking at this and thinking, what the heck's going on? Pileggi comes up, hits the field goal. All of a sudden, you have a walk-off win for Aquinas. Cocoa got one more chance, but with 6 seconds left, it was an incompletion. Didn't end up winning the game. So anyway, that entire sequence happens. It's left Cocoa in a position where now they're appealing even to the FHSA. According to a report by the Florida Today, which covers Cocoa High, they're appealing to the state in hopes of a reversal. But again, I mean, that's where I wanted to kind of discuss that with you, Joe, a little bit. I mean, I personally, just from all the years of covering this, it's got to be something pretty bad for the FHSAA to rule in. And usually it's when it involves like an ineligible player or something like that, where a little different scenario. But I mean, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about just kind of what a precedent that would set if they did do something like that.
Yeah, and look, you want the right outcome, but you also at what cost? Normally, appeals are either a misinterpretation of a rule, or like you say, maybe eligibility. A lot of times, anything "quote unquote" judgment by an official doesn't really get an overturn. I just read something where they're acting like they think it doesn't fall under judgment. They just say the regular clock practices weren't performed correctly.
Right.
And again, and obviously it's a bizarre series of events. So my point is, let's say they did reverse it. You're going to pretend that Aquinas didn't get the ball back and drive down the field and kick a field goal and just end the game based on the knees and say the clock should have been a running clock. So that never took place. And then, okay, let's say, because I read somewhere where it said they thought on the kneel down, it should have been 7 seconds, not 1. What's going to happen now in any type of time of clock situation that's more than a few seconds? That gives if you lose on let's say you get down to the 1 yard line and you felt you had enough time to run one more play, but the clock ran out. You just quickly appeal and you look at a video and it shows the clock shouldn't have run out. So you're awarded a win. I just think it's very, very slippery. I still think it's judgment. Coco may not believe it's a judgment, but I kind of do. I'm sympathetic to what they, hey, trust me, it's terrible to lose a game in such a fashion. But I think if high school football wants to go there where they're deciding the outcomes and saying this is how it should have ended, it's really, really slippery to do that. You could sit around and say if everything went right, who knows, maybe they fumble a snap or something if instead of taking a knee properly or what, there's all sorts of stuff. I just think if I'll equate to baseball, like if it's the pine tar thing with where there was the appeal and an overturn and there's something with equipment or whatever, this is still a judgment. I still, no matter how you slice it might be semantics. It's not an egregious violation or not knowing the rule. We've seen in the college level a fifth down, and a team win or lose 20 years ago, whenever that happened. But you always see something bizarre like that. It's highly unfortunate. It will probably ding St. Thomas if this is upheld. They might not get the people that would give St. Thomas the benefit of the doubt, may not give them the benefit of the doubt in terms of, national type of exposure and so forth. But I don't know how you just completely say you won and you lost after everyone walked off the field that night, with an outcome that had St. Thomas, however controversial, holding up the victory.
Yeah, there's too much gray there, and I agree with you. I think it's too much of I can't see it any other way than a judgment call by the officiating crew. I mean, you feel it sucks to lose a game that way, but at the same time, how do you you don't have as much something tangible to really look at, like in some of the other cases where you'd make an overturn or ruling to that. I haven't seen it unless it were. I mean, I've seen teams go to court over things and get an injunction and then start up a game again, play it over, type of thing like that. But this doesn't look like anything like that would warrant, a decision like that to overrule a game like this. And you hear stories all the time. I mean, I've heard coaches tell me even this year about, they go on the road and somebody got a fifth down. I mean, I heard a story the other day just about a call about a kick that they swear they have it on video that the kid made the field goal, and one referee didn't know, and the other one, and they said it was no good. So those things that they're unfortunate that they happen, but you have the human error element too, and it's going to happen again, especially with timekeeping, because as you and I both know from covering this a lot, you can't trust the scoreboard. A lot of places the scoreboard's wrong half the time, or maybe it doesn't even work, and time's being kept on the field. I mean, imagine if that would have been the scenario, like if Aquinas' scoreboard, we've seen it. There's a lot of high schools where the referees have to keep it on the field, and then the observer has no way of knowing exactly how much time left.
That was my question there. Obviously it wasn't at that game, but don't the officials have the time on the field?
Right. They always do. They're supposed to. So
I mean, maybe they need some clarity there, and not to say that would overturn it, but if, maybe the official was like, it was more than 128 on the clock or whatever. I'm just saying. But I just think it's real slippery. And maybe if the takeaway is that they're stricter on the field officiating time, or one of the officials that's not the scoreboard operator, that can have a say, or that's the official clock. But I just think it's like you say, where do you get down to it? Oh, one angle showed that extra point was good, or that field goal was good, but it was ruled bad. Are they going to send that film into the high school association and overturn the outcome? I mean, there's just a lot that could go into if you set this precedent of overturning an outcome, compared to, correcting what should be corrected is just get the clock operation with a backup plan.
Right.
I read where they said the scoreboard, like we discussed this on the phone the other day before we did the pod, about, the scoreboard had only one timeout. Well,
yeah.
The scoreboard might have the ball on midfield when it's on the 3. It doesn't mean it's at midfield.
It doesn't mean it's accurate.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on the scoreboard that isn't necessarily in sync with. I've seen this is second down on the scoreboard, and I was like, that's third down, but the scoreboard had second down, or whatever. There's a lot of stuff on the scoreboard that isn't. There might be a light bulb that's not working, or it might be, or a light bulb that's permanently on.
So much unpredictability. I mean, I've seen the downs wrong on the chains themselves half the time, and then that gets a pause of the game at the reset. But
I hate it for Cocoa. I really do, and you wish the outcome would be settled by the performance. But I just think that's way too slippery if they're going to just do. Maybe they want this controversy, and then maybe that's good for publicity or something. Yeah. But I could just see. Imagine there's going to be so much stuff that's going to be thrown on their desk saying, hey, look, we got screwed here. That's the outcome. Right. There was 4 more seconds than the clock. We were keeping the clock here. We had 28 extra seconds than what the clock said. And here we got videos just to prove it. I just, again, you hate it, but I think I'd hate more seeing the unintended consequences if they were to try to flip a score and basically say that walk-off kick never happened, that long pass to chance didn't happen. Because obviously you could also say Venice didn't have to give up the big play, or excuse me, Cocoa didn't have to give up the big play. Right. It's like, there's a lot goes into that was played. It'd be very bizarre to say that final half a minute didn't play.
And it's always funny when you hear like a coach will then come back when I hear those stories about excuses and all that, and then they'll come back and say, well, you know how you avoid that? You don't let it come down to that, right? And then so you see that's another part of it. But it'll be interesting to see how it's ruled. But let's transition now. Before we get to our picks of the week for week 4, we want to mention our Player of the Week polls are up at MiamiHerald.com as they have started to be again for this season. A lot of football high performances this week. We mentioned Sterling Juice Joseph over at Edison. We mentioned EJ Marsland's 3-sack game against Booker T. Alberto Mendoza. We haven't really done much in person yet on Columbus. They've been on the road a lot early in the season, but I'm sure that's going to change starting this week. Mendoza, 17 of 19, very accurate, 261 yards and 4 touchdown passes, leading the Explorers to a 42-14 win over a pretty good Tampa Jesuit team on the road in Tampa. Then in other sports, in girls volleyball, Julia Lukowitz totaled a combined 74 kills, 38 digs, and 6 aces to lead Ransom Everglades to the championship of the Nike Tournament of Champions. Ransom, a surprise unbeaten at 11-0 so far this season. And a couple cross-country runners, Mark Gonzalez at Matter Lakes and Alessandra Perez at Lourdes, both won the boys and girls invitationals, respectively, at the FNU, Florida National University Invitational last week at Larry and Penny. And then in Broward County, we had a few guys, most notably Jeremiah Smith at Chaminade. Listen to this, folks. 15 catches, 282 yards, and 3 touchdowns. A monster performance in a win, in a 61-21 monster victory for the Lions over nationally ranked New Jersey powerhouse Bergen Catholic. At Coconut Creek, we had Jamari Holtzclaw run for 114 yards and 34 carries. Talk about workhorse to lead them to a 2015 victory over Western. Michael Merdinger over at Cardinal Gibbons, 19 of 34, 221. He also threw 4 touchdown passes in a win over Dillard. A.J. Hairston, who we knew was going to have a big year from Monarch, a little bit overmatched Hallandale team, but still tremendous performance. 4 touchdown passes, 2 rushing, 353 yards on just 15 of 20 attempts for Hairston. And then on the volleyball court at Pinecrest, Mia Gold, who was all county last season, had 68 kills, averaged 4.1 kills per set, along with 46 digs in a few victories for Pinecrest at that same Nike Invitational. But vote for the players of the week in Dayton Broward. But before we move on, one of those players of the week, I know Joe was there in person to watch this ridiculous performance. I mean, this was like, I think I joked with you, this reminded me of Megatron, Calvin Johnson type numbers back in there, or the Brandon Marshall game where he just caught pass after pass. But take us through it. How impressive was that to watch, that 15 for 282?
Jeremiah Smith had maybe the greatest prep performance I've ever seen. He is freakishly good. So much, you know, and I wrote it in the story I wrote for the Herald. You know, people talk about best receiver in the country. That was best player in the country stuff. Yeah. You know, Jeremiah Smith's talent is unheard of. The Bergen coach said he had never seen a game so dominant by a wide receiver. And that team is loaded. Bergen Catholic is loaded. And this kid, obviously with JoJo Trader still out with the shoulder, and Chaminade getting out of the chute. They're playing great, but their first few wins, a little bit of slow starts. They felt compelled to. They really focused on a quick start. And Cedric Bailey, the quarterback, had a monster game as well. But they quickly established Jeremiah Smith and the kid's vertical leap. This was like an NFL player playing against high school kids. And that's what it looked like. Catching the ball 15 yards over the middle and breaking free for 40 yards, 78 yards on basically a 10-yard out in the corner. The poor kid, with no help behind him, comes out to try to make the tackle, misses, and it's a track meet. He made one play right before the first half ended. Bailey just kind of threw it up there and really put a lot of air under it. And Smith's speed was adjusting in his route. He already his defender beat badly. He kicked it up another gear and sprawled out, just laid out and caught it. But because he caught it and fell down, it wasn't another 70-yard grab. But he ended up scoring on a 14-yard touchdown pass anyway on a little slant in the end zone. His blocking ability, his aggressiveness. Again, I don't want to sway anybody's votes for player of the week, but this is player of the freaking state season. If you just looked at the talent, it was just jaw drop stuff. Like, what are we watching? And the thing about it is, and we see it with Central, we see it with Chaminade, St. Thomas, American Heritage has it too. So many great players on the field that sometimes Fletcher did it a lot at running back last year for Heritage, where they'd have to rely on him. Chaminade hasn't had to rely on Jeremiah Smith because they're usually blowing everyone out. He could get his 5 or 6 catches, and so can Trader and everybody else on the team. But when they highlight him and just let him take over a game, man, Ohio State, he's firmly there. But I'm sure every other school is like, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? I'm sure this kid's phone is nothing but buzzing 24/7. And he's a great kid. I hope he stays humble. And Damian Jones is a master at staying humble. And the more I'm thinking too is, when are colleges going to come for either Damian Jones or Jube Joseph? These guys are elite coaches. And I'm saying coaches. Not just high school coaches.
Yeah. Well, we could do a whole other episode on how coaching down here is kind of underrated nationally, but these guys definitely have done an amazing job. I think they will eventually. We'll see it. Damian's been around for a while. Not to get too much into the game with Central yet because it's still on the horizon, but I know Damian goes back to the days when he was the coach at Hallandale High, and he had Tyler Huntley, Zach Moss, really talented squad, and they couldn't get over the hump, which was central back then. Now at Chaminade, he's built this superpower. So I know he's also, maybe there's a little undercurrent there that I'm sure he won't say it, but I'm sure he's waiting for that game too to kind of show, and that's going to be tremendous in a couple of weeks. But let's get to the games that are this week in week 4. And we'll start with one that, again, 2 teams coming off interesting results last week, and that's Western going down to St. Thomas. St. Thomas, of course, coming off everything we just said with the Cocoa game. And Western took an L last week, a little surprising after a bye week after they had beaten the Milton team. Their offense really hasn't gotten really going yet. They lose 20-15 against Coconut Creek, an upstart Coconut Creek team that's looking to make some noise too. But kind of how do you see this matchup, Joe? I mean, you know a lot about both teams. Western with, of course, by Dalby Belfort leading the way, the Virginia Tech commit.
Yeah, it's Western's offense hasn't clicked yet either. And this isn't really the matchup for them to get it clicking.
Right.
And, we talked a little bit earlier about Central hasn't found their identity with a new QB. I still think St. Thomas hasn't either. So I think it's I like St. Thomas because I think the timing isn't great for Western. They didn't come out of the chute with these 30, 40-point scores that we're used to seeing them have, which might be a little bit more. That's not to say they don't have the weapons to do it, but typically St. Thomas has the size. They're built to wear you down, and I think I think there's going to be a lot of motivation. It should be a great game, but I do like St. Thomas in this one.
Yeah, I'm with you too. And I think one of the big reasons that we saw early on was the absence of Tavani Mizell in the backfield for Western, because that's the kind of weapon that, especially in a game like this, where you don't want to get worn down up front by St. Thomas. You need to actually keep that offense off the field. But yeah, I think, after watching that game last week, James Madison is a monster too for St. Thomas. I mean, he made tons of plays in that game against Cocoa way before anything crazy happened at the end. And I think he's going to be a playmaker too. Yeah, I'm rolling with the Raiders in this one. Let's talk about that Coconut Creek team. They're back home, and they're going to face a team just like them that is a lot better this season. That's Plantation. I mean, this is a team that, maybe their schedule is not the strongest down the road, but they're facing a few early tests here that could really put them in a position where they could rattle off a lot of wins in a row. The Colonels, of course, coached by veteran Steve Davis, they're always in the mix. But maybe this year they take it a step further, because this is one of the better teams he's had in a long time. They had the transfer from Dillard, their quarterback last year. JT Tabora has come in. He's played really well. Reginald Johnson, a wide receiver as well, has been leading them. I kind of like this is a hard one to call, really, because, like I said, both teams, and Creek is coming off the big high of beating Western last week, and they're back home. I don't know. I think if anyone's going to be Plantation, it'll probably happen this week. But I'm not sure who to pick in this one, honestly. I'm a little bit stumped. What do you think, Joe?
I'll probably go with Plantation, just for what you say. You could take it 2 ways. You get an emotional win over a team like Western, or did that take so much out of you? So I think I'm going with Plantation this one.
Yeah. And I'll probably dwell on it a little more. I have my column that always comes out every Tuesday and before I make the pick, but I could really see it going both ways. But one thing I'll say for Plantation's favor, in Plantation's favor, is you don't put too much stock into the preseason classic, but they scored 45 on Cardinal Gibbons, and that's no joke. I mean, it was a 45. Yeah. I think it ended 45 all, ended up in a draw, but that's saying something about how much better your offense is if you can do that to a team like Gibbons. So maybe it is the time for the Colonels here. Another game we've mentioned earlier, Northwestern against Edison. By the way, those first 2 in Broward, Thursday night at 7. This one also Thursday night at 7 at Travis Powell Northwestern against Edison. I think the Bulls here, kind of, even in defeat, have shown how much talent they still have. They just need to get some reps in, some experience. I saw Edison, and while they have those playmakers, it might be a decently, pretty close game early on, but a lot of mistakes in that game. So if they do that again, they're not going to be able to hold down Northwestern the way they did North Miami. I'm picking the Bulls.
Is that one of those games you take the over because Northwestern?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. Yeah, I like I said earlier about Northwestern. I just think this team's going to kind of incrementally get better and better. Now they got to figure out how to win. You know, you could play close, you could play a shootout game, you could go on the road and play close. But I think once they figure out how to win, they're going to be dangerous. So this will help them move in that direction.
Yeah, and this is a district game too, so an important one later on for playoff positioning or even making the playoffs, period. And Northwestern, I think down the road, Booker T is the target game because they're in their district, and that's the team that I feel like they're going to want to gear up eventually to try and have a chance to beat. But in this week, they'll be fine. Now to Columbus, who we kept saying was out of town. Now they're going to be at home, and this is one of their bigger games, one of their not district game, but an important one in the region with one of the other contenders in Class 4M. They host Palmetto at Tropical Park on Saturday. It sounds like a Saturday afternoon game at 4:00 over at Tropical Park. I've got to go with the Explorers just on depth, and that's the way they've won these last few years. They've owned this series with Palmetto in recent years, even though Palmetto has looked impressive. Their defense is a lot better. Ja'Cory Barney is a major weapon, the Nebraska commit on offense. But Columbus sounds like even though they lost all those starters up front on the offensive line, those guys have had a good start to their season. It looks like a typical Columbus team that can run the ball, throw the ball with Mendoza, and their defense is pretty well. I mean, when you're holding teams like Jesuit to only 14 points, that shows you that the defense is still strong. I got to go with Columbus here.
Yeah, we saw Palmetto. We had good conversations with their coach and players at Media Day. And, they talked a lot about, being a state contender and moving that direction. So, Columbus is a standard, right? So This is a big opportunity for Palmetto to show that they could beat a team like Columbus. But at the end of the day, Columbus is Columbus for a reason. And like you said, I like the quarterback, I like Mendoza so much. And, the big tight end we talked to that they have as well. And then their lines, and they got playmakers, and they can win a grind out physical, low scoring. They can put points on you, however you want to play. Columbus can play you that way. So it's a good test. I think it'll be a close game. I think at least for a good bit of it, I like Palmetto to really make a statement, but at the end of the day, for who's going to win the game, Columbus will probably win the game.
Yeah, and last year, I know the second meeting, Palmetto, I think, was up at the half, and then kind of the thing we were talking about before, that kind of just wore down, and Columbus ended up winning. But I think Palmetto can stay there a little longer this season for sure and make it a close game. But yeah, the Explorers still the team to beat in 4M. And now the big one, that Chaminade team, yet another step. I kept calling it like the 5-game gauntlet early on. Now the next step, American Heritage.
Yeah,
at their place.
Yeah, it's at Heritage. Heritage had a week off.
Right.
Heritage is, Mike Smith does an amazing job there. They're so well coached. They got such a young team. Bell is going to be a super quarterback. They got 3 or 4 running backs that are all great. They got Malachi Tony. They got 2 other sophomore receivers that are just as good as Tony. They're strong defensively, and they're going up against like an NFL team. It's like
I know.
It's like it is just I'm going to be fascinated. I'm very much looking forward to that game. I'm going to have to go with Chaminade. I think that Heritage will make it closer, than certainly than Bergen Catholic did. But because Heritage just has a way. If Heritage can control the ball enough, but I'm not sure they're kind of built that they could score some points too. But do you really want to be in a shootout with Chaminade? It kind of puts you in a really. That's what's fascinating about it, because you can sit around and Heritage can bleed some clock. They got those big running backs and some good running backs that they could run clock and try to shorten the game that way. But that's not really how Diabell is built either. He's not necessarily a clock management type of guy. And they got not just Tony, but they got three guys that could do some damage at wide receiver. But again, do you want to have a track meet with Chaminade? And I don't know if anybody in the country wants to have a track meet with Chaminade. So that will be the tactical, thing I'll be fascinated by. How does Heritage want to how do they want to play it? Because Chaminade could play it either way. Chaminade, we'll run the ball too. We don't mind. We'll do that. They got so many weapons. And the thing about it is with Chaminade that stood out to me, Bergen Catholic has a big offensive line. They got this big left tackle that's a Georgia commit. And they ran a little bit against Chaminade. Now they were down 20-0 after 6 minutes, but you're not really pushing Chaminade off the ball too much. So I'm not sure it's going to be easy sledding running against Chaminade. So I like Chaminade by at least 10 points probably.
Yeah, and that's where, again, I'm so impressed this year with how much better they are on the defensive side of the ball. As much as they're loaded on offense, but again, those up front too, like guys like Dante Simpson and Zaquan Patterson making plays like he made against Gibbons. I mean, that's where, again, they could turn a game we're all expecting to be relatively close very easily into a rout against a very good opponent like they did last week. They turned it into a laugher right away. I don't think they'll do that to Heritage necessarily, but like you said, you get into a track meet with them, one mistake or two, and all of a sudden you find yourself down by 21, and then guess what? It happened.
Yeah, then you're out of what you could do. You become one-dimensional. They could tee it up. Keep this in mind. Bullet Goss he got kind of hit. The guy speared him in the head. He came out of the game.
Right.
He was going to come out of the game anyway because of the blowout. So we're hoping he's fine. It didn't seem like a concussion, but it was that type of thing you worry about when you're struck in the head. So I'm hoping he's fine. But that could change a little bit, although Chaminade's got like freshman running back or two that are going to be better than everybody anyway. So they got a lot of weapons. How do you control Bailey? It's going to be big for them, for Heritage. Again, if there's a team that's coaching staff can put together a game plan to do it, and I'm sure they're going to look at the film of last year when they were kind of right in it, and then they had the big turnover by Ennis fumbled the ball real late in the game, and Chaminade bled the clock out there. Playing at home, advantage for Heritage, but that's going to be fascinating to see what type of game plan American Heritage has to try to slow this down.
For sure. And I think it could end up being last year was a great game. Came down to just a couple of plays at the end that Chaminade pulled it out. So let's hope it's a great one again between two of the best teams, two state title contenders, two teams that, like in Chaminade's case, still very much alive and looking like a legit national title contender. It's a shame they're not playing Bishop Gorman this season. I think they could probably put on a way better performance than they did at the end of last season. JoJo Trader, like you mentioned, are also still iffy to play in this game. I think they're targeting maybe a return for the Central game, but we'll see. He's still ailing that shoulder that he hurt in the Broward Showcase, but should be a great one. Joe, thanks again. Not just for appearing on the show this time, but for anchoring this thing with me. And hey, hopefully it won't be the last time. I'd love to have you back as co-host.
This is fun. Again, a message I say: support the high school sports. I mean, we have so much talent here. We could, Andre's bringing up names of these teams that, the Plantations, schools that we don't talk about as much, but there's D1 players. There could be guys that will be playing on TV on Saturdays in college and then on Sundays that are just everywhere. Every one of these teams has really, really good talent. So everyone, if you get a chance, come support some of this stuff. You have nothing to do on a Thursday or Friday night or occasional Saturday. Go out and see these games because it's a lot of fun. Yeah. And this show's been a lot of fun. Dre, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. So for Joe Frisaro, I'm Andre Fernandez. We'll be back next week to recap all these games that we just talked about and look ahead to week 5 as the high school football season and the high school sports season in general continues. Thanks for joining us, everybody.